That summer in Florida, my life took a sharp turn. Like a truck swerving on a wet highway T38, I believed I had it all: a stable marriage to Tom, a respected career as an editor at a prestigious publishing house, and a beautiful suburban home that perfectly blended comfort and style. Then came the call from my best friend, Sophia, who changed everything. "Linda, I need a huge favor," she pleaded, her voice trembling with a desperation that grabbed me by the heartstrings. "It's about James, my son. He's heading to the University of Florida to study architecture, but I don't know anyone there who can help him get settled. Our college roommate bond was unbreakable, despite distance and time, even though life took us down different paths. She moved to California while I stayed in the Midwest, but our friendship never wavered." I didn't hesitate. "Of course," I said, "I'd be happy to help James. He can stay with us as long as he needs until he finds his own place." I vaguely remembered James from the few family gatherings we'd attended together. The last time I saw him, he was about 15, a gangly and shy teenager. Now, 7 years later, I was preparing to welcome a young adult into my home. As Tom and I waited at the airport terminal for his arrival, my mind wandered, wondering what James would be like now. Will he still be the shy boy? Or would he have developed into a confident young man? I got the answer when I watched him walk through the arrival gates. My heart skips a beat. James had changed into a tall, athletic man with a brilliant grin and green eyes that seemed to pierce your soul. His slightly unkempt brown hair had a freewheeling attitude that contrasted with his meticulously chosen clothing. For a brief period, I was out of breath. "Aunt Linda," James exclaimed when he spotted us, using the friendly moniker he had always given me, despite the fact that we were not related. He hugged me closely, and I could feel his body solid against mine. I quickly backed away after feeling a shudder run down my spine. Tom, oblivious to my surprise, greeted him cheerfully. During the ride home, James told us about his study goals and his excitement about beginning this new chapter in Florida. I tried to concentrate on the talk, but I couldn't help but steal looks in the rearview mirror, meeting those green eyes that regarded me with an unsettling intensity. The first few days were without incident. I focused myself to touring James around the city and assisting him in becoming acquainted with the university and neighboring areas. Tom was so busy with his profession as a lawyer that he seldom spent time at home, leaving James and me alone for the majority of the day. During one of those city tours, things began to alter. We were walking through Grant Park when James abruptly halted and fixed his gaze on me. "Linda, I'd like to thank you for everything you do for me," he whispered softly, making my skin tingle. "I'm not sure how I could have adapted so quickly without your assistance." "You do not have to thank me, James," I said, attempting to retain a casual tone. "It's a pleasure to help you." He took a step towards me, reducing the distance between us. "Aunt, you are truly wonderful. I've admired you since childhood." His remarks struck me by surprise. I felt a flush build up my cheeks, and for a moment, I lost myself in his gaze. It was then that I recognized how deadly things were becoming. I took a step back and broke the spell. "We should go back," I remarked urgently. "It's getting late, and Tom will be home shortly." The walk back was filled with silent strain. I could feel James's eyes on me, and every time our arms accidentally touched, an electric current surged through my body. "This is wrong," I told myself over and over. "He's your best friend's son. Is he young enough to be your son? You're married, for God's sake." But despite my efforts to remain calm, something had shifted. The ensuing days were a wonderful agony. Every moment alone with James was an internal conflict between want and reason. I found myself dressing up more than usual, meticulously selecting my outfits each morning, as if I were a teenager getting ready for a date. One afternoon, while instructing James how to use the basement washing machine, the unavoidable occurred. We were alone in the house. Tom had left town for business. As we bent down to load the clothing, our hands brushed together. We just stood there. The energy in the air felt real. James slowly turned to me, his eyes filled with longing that reflected mine. He whispered, and before I could respond, his lips had touched mine. The kiss was powerful and passionate, releasing all the tension built up over weeks. My hands tangled in his hair as he pinned me against the washing machine. For a moment, I lost myself in the taste-love warmth of his strong, youthful body. But then, reality hit me like lightning. I backed away abruptly, panting. "No, James, this is incorrect. We cannot." I spoke, my voice trembling. "Why not?" he inquired, his eyes filled with perplexity and yearning. "Linda, I know you're feeling it too. You cannot refute it. James, I am a married woman, and you are my best friend's son. This cannot happen," I said, despite the fact that every fiber of my being told me differently. I rushed out of the basement, leaving James alone and perplexed. I closed myself in my room, my heart pounding. What did I do? How had I allowed things to get this far? That night, as I laid in bed next to Tom, who had arrived late from his vacation, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts kept replaying James's kiss, the sensation of his lips, and the warmth of his body. I felt guilty, afraid, and alive. I felt more alive than I had in many years. The days that followed were filled with uncomfortable glances and heated conversations. James and I attempted to be normal in front of Tom, but the mood in the home had turned electric. Every inadvertent brush, every moment alone, was infused with barely restrained sexual intensity. While Tom was at work, James caught me in the kitchen. He came up to me determined. "Linda," he murmured in a quiet voice, "we cannot continue like this. Though I realize you're married and this is difficult, what I sense for you is real. I cannot simply write it off." Leeching on the counter, I sighed. "James, I sense something as well. This cannot be though. Too much is online here." He approached till I could feel his body radiating heat. "Suppose we could find a way. Suppose we could be together without anyone feeling hurt?" His comments were seductive, dangerously so. Some of me wanted to give in, want to forget about everything else and toss myself into his arms. Still, the logical side of my brain battled non-stop. I answered regretfully, "James," not knowing how we might accomplish it. He said, "Let me show you." Before I could object, his lips were burst in me. This time I lacked the will to object. I gave myself to the kiss and let my hands explore his youthful, strong body. We kissed with unfettered intensity, as though the world was about to close at any one moment. When we eventually parted ways, panting, I realized I had passed the point of no return. I could no longer deny my feelings for James, or his feelings for me. But I couldn't ignore the complexities this would bring into our life. In the end, I stated that we need to exercise caution. No one will be able to find out if we make this decision. There is no one. On a melancholy note, James nodded. This will be a well-guarded secret between us. The beginning of our covert affair was so marked. Over the course of the subsequent several weeks, James and I were able to find periods of solitude, stealing kisses and caresses when Tom wasn't home. Each and every encounter, there was a mixture of uncontrolled passion and oppressive duty. I was able to relive the excitement of a forbidden love, and I felt like I was back in my teenage years. It was the adrenaline rush of coming so close to getting discovered, the complicit glances during family dinners, and the secret text messages. The whole thing brought a level of enthusiasm into my life that I hadn't experienced in many years. On the other hand, as time went on, the burden of guilt became increasingly heavy. The sensation that I was being stabbed in the heart was something that I experienced each time Tom kissed me or told me that he loved me. And the thought of Sophia, and how she would react if she ever found out what was going on between her son and me, filled me with a horror that rendered me completely paralyzed. While James and I were in the guest room one evening, taking advantage of the fact that Tom was out with his co-workers, we heard the sound of the front door opening. He eyed me with an inquisitive expression. "How are you doing? You look to be flustered?" "Okay, I'm good," I responded right away. "I'm just a little bit weak." The fact that you came back so quickly surprised me. I was kissed gently by him as he moved closer to me. A little odor of alcohol could be detected on his breath, and I could detect it. The meeting was over far earlier than was anticipated. "Can you find James?" My heart was beating quite fast. He went out with some pals that he had met at the university, as you would say. It would appear that Tom was content with the explanation, since he nodded. As he moved closer to me, he smiled in a way that suggested he was inviting me to join him in his company. I had a surge of anxiety. At a distance of only a few feet, James was concealed within the closet. I could not allow this to take place at this time. "Oh, honey. I'm sorry," I said, faking a yawn. "I'm completely worn out. Why don't we turn in for the night?" Although he appeared dissatisfied, Tom nodded his head in comprehension. Everyone has had a very long day, that much is certain. As soon as we exited the room, we went straight to our bedroom. During the time that I was lying down next to my husband, my thoughts kept going back to James, who was confined in that closet and waiting for the right time to emerge. There was a significant turning point that night. The gravity of what we were doing, the continual threat of being caught, began to overshadow the exhilaration of our affair. I recognized we couldn't continue like this indefinitely. Something needed to change. The ensuing days were torturous. Every time I glanced at Tom, I felt overwhelmed with remorse. Every moment alone with James was infused with a tension that beyond desire. I knew we needed to make a decision, but the thought of the implications stopped me. James finally broke the silence. He confronted me one day when we were alone in the house. He remarked, "Linda, we can't go on like this," in a serious tone that astonished me. "This is ruining both of us." I nodded and felt a lump in my throat. "I understand, James. So, what can we do? I can't see a path out that doesn't include hurting someone." He grasped my hands in his and looked me right in the eyes. "Maybe it's time to be honest. With Tom, my mother, and everyone." The concept horrified me. "Are you crazy? Do you know what that would do?" "It would devastate my marriage, your bond with your mother, and my friendship with Sophia." "I understand," James murmured softly. "But don't you think we are already ruining everything with our lies? At the very least, if we are honest, we will be able to face the consequences in dignity." His words struck me hard. He was correct, of course. Every day, we kept up this act. Every lie we uttered weakened the foundations of our relationships a little farther. "I'm not sure, James," I responded honestly, "but I am aware that we cannot continue as we have been. We must be honest with everyone, especially your mother." James nodded, his face pallid and resolute. "You're correct. I owe that to my mother. You owe it to Sophia." The thought of confronting Sophia made me terrified. What would be the best way to convey to her that I had developed feelings for her son? What if I had not only betrayed her confidence, but also a friendship that had lasted for many years? Over the course of the subsequent days, there was a flurry of feelings and conflicts. Tom came back for a little while to pick up some more of his belongings, his face displaying a mixture of pain and resignation. Due to the vast distance that separated us, we did not engage in much conversation. We came to the conclusion that it would be most beneficial for him to relocate to a dorm on campus. We both realized that we needed some space to think in order to figure out what it was that we truly desired, and the tension that was present in the house was intolerable. It was finally time for the moment that I dreaded the most: confronting Sophia. I came to the conclusion that it would be more effective to carry it out in person. My heart was racing the entire time I was traveling to California, and I took an airplane to get there. Sophia gave me a smile as she greeted me, but it quickly disappeared when she saw the expression on my face. A cup of tea was waiting for us in front of us as we sat in her living room drinking it. "Are you Sophia?" I started, my voice cracking slightly. "It is necessary for me to share something with you. Anything that is likely to cause you a great deal of pain. Also, I am very sorry." I was able to observe the growing concern in her eyes as I shared everything with her. Regarding James, our affair, and the manner in which I had ruined my marriage and violated her trust, I went into detail. The words rushed out in a torrent that could not be stopped, and they were accompanied by tears and apologies. When I finished, the quiet was deafening. Sophia looked at me as if I were a stranger, as if she did not recognize the woman seated in front of her. "How could you, Linda?" she eventually asked, her voice full of pain and betrayal. "You are my best friend. I trusted you to care for my son, not seduce him." "I know, Sophia, and I am deeply sorry. I never intended for this to happen." You what?" she interrupted, fury replacing the initial shock. "It's just happened. You tripped and fell into wrong relation with my son." Her words struck me like slaps. I knew I earned her rage and scorn, but that didn't make it any less terrible. "I make no excuses, Sophia. I added softly. I can only say that I am sorry and that I understand if you are unable to forgive me. Sophia stood up and turned her back on me. I need you to leave, Linda. I cannot look at you right now. I rose up, feeling as if every action required a huge effort. Before leaving, I paused at the door. I love you, Sophia. You have always been my best friend. I'm very sorry for spoiling that. I did not wait for a response. Tears blurred my vision as I walked to my rented automobile. The journey back to Florida was a blur of self-reflection and sorrow. I had lost a lot. My marriage, my best friend, and the trust of those who were most important to me. And for what? An affair with a man significantly younger than me? When I got home, I was shocked to see James waiting for me. He was meant to be at the university dormitories. But there he was, sitting on the porch steps. James, what are you doing here? I inquired, feeling a mixture of relief and fear at seeing him. He rose up and approached me with a serious look on his face. Linda, we need to chat. I have been giving a lot of thought to the situation, and I believe that we have made a significant error. The sensation I experienced was that someone had punched me in the gut. May I ask what you mean? The expression of annoyance on James's face was conveyed by a sigh as he ran his fingers through his hair. This isn't real, is it? I feel something for you. Of course, I do. What I mean is that I have a feeling for you. However, is this sufficient to excuse all of the devastation that we have caused? His statements struck a chord within me, giving a voice to the uncertainties that I had been experiencing on my own. Could this be love? Is it merely a fantasy, a way for me to get away from the routine of my life? I am not sure, James, and I answered in an honest manner. I thought it was, but now I'm not sure of anything. We stood in silence for a moment. We are being burdened by the weight of our acts and the consequences of those actions. I believe it is time for me to depart, James eventually stated. Not just this house, but Florida. Perhaps it would be better if I took a gap year, traveled a little bit, and tried to clean my thoughts. The thought of him departing caused me to experience a twinge of pain. However, I was aware that he was correct. To be able to heal, we required space and time to ponder. I understand, I whispered to myself. In my opinion, it is perfect for everyone. James gave a slight nod, and for a brief instant, I was able to see the insecure young guy who had made his way to my door a few weeks before. Linda, I am truly sorry. Regarding everything. It's my fault as well, James. My eyes began to well up with tears once more as I attempted to respond. We exchanged a brief embrace, one that was filled with regret and a sense of farewell. After then, I observed him as he walked away, his silhouette vanishing into the gloom of the night. As I stood there, on the porch of a house that no longer had the feeling of being home, I reflected on the ruins of the life that I had constructed for myself. I had suffered a great deal of loss, and now I was left to deal with the repercussions of my actions on my own. A time of introspection and reconstruction followed, which lasted for the subsequent months. It was a difficult but necessary process, but Tom and I decided to divorce. Despite the fact that our relationship never went back to the way it was before, Sophia eventually consented to another conversation with me. As promised, James embarked on a journey with his family. The practice of mailing postcards from distant locations on occasion. As time went on, I started to put my life back together again. In an effort to find redemption within the pages of the books that I edited, I completely submerged myself in my work. I decided to undergo treatment in order to confront the demons that had caused me to make decisions that were so damaging. James wrote me a letter 1 year after that disastrous summer. I was surprised to see it. According to what he wrote, he was in Europe, making discoveries about himself while studying architecture. In addition to expressing gratitude for everything that we had been through together, he also confirmed what we had both suspected. The love that we shared was nothing more than a delusion, an absconding. I had a range of emotions as I read his remarks, including relief and sadness. Both relief and despair came over me as I realized that I could finally put an end to that period of my life. I felt like I had lost everything in the process. However, I also experienced a sense of hope. Hope due to the fact that I had emerged victorious despite my errors. I had acquired knowledge. I was older now. And at this point, I was presented with the chance to construct a new life, one that was founded on honesty and integrity. Upon gazing out the window of my newly acquired condo and observing the sun setting over the landscape of Florida, I came to the realization that this was my second opportunity. An opportunity to improve oneself, one's love life, and one's personal life. In addition, I would not throw it away this time.